let's talk about one of the most powerful tools humanity has ever come up with, the mathematical model. It's how we make sense of the absolutely massive, complex systems that shape our world, from the invisible spread of a virus to the tiny machinery inside a single cell, all the way to the wild frontier of artificial intelligence. So let's dive in and see how these things actually work.
I mean, just stop and think about it for a second. A pandemic is driven by billions of tiny individual human interactions. A living cell is a dizzying, beautiful mess of chemical reactions. And AI learns from patterns so subtle that no human could ever spot them. How on earth do you even begin to get a handle on any of that? The complexity is just mind-boggling, right?
Well, the answer is the mathematical model. And honestly, the best way to think about a model is to think of it like a map. You know, a map of a city isn't the city itself. It leaves out all the cars, the people, the noise, the smells. But without that simplified guide, you'd be totally lost. Models do the exact same thing for scientists. They strip away all the distracting noise to show you the fundamental structure underneath, giving us a way to navigate that insane complexity.
All right, so let's kick things off with something we're all unfortunately pretty familiar with, trying to predict the path of a pandemic. This is a perfect case of using a model to make the invisible, well, visible.
So what's really cool is how a model can take a huge, scary problem and break it down into these manageable pieces. Think of them as ingredients. You've got the basic reproduction number. You've probably heard this called R0, which is basically just how many people does one sick person infect. You have to factor in the incubation period, that sneaky time when the virus is hiding out. And maybe most importantly, you model host behavior. Are people wearing masks? Are they traveling? Each one of these is like a dial you can turn in the model to run what-if scenarios and see how the future might change.
Okay, but what if models could do more than just predict? What if they could actually help us create? Well, in the field of synthetic biology, models aren't just maps of what is. They're blueprints to design and build living things that have never existed before. We're moving from just reading the map to actually drawing a whole new one.
You see, the big idea behind synthetic biology is to treat life kind of like a set of Legos. You take biological parts, things like genes that create proteins or promoters that act like on-off switches, and you snap them together into circuits, just like an electrical engineer would. The whole point is to program a cell to do something new and useful, like maybe produce a medicine or glow when it detects a toxin in the water. A classic example of this is a famous synthetic circuit called the reproscillator. And yeah, I know that sounds super complicated, but the model behind it, it's actually beautiful in its simplicity. It's a circuit that was designed from the ground up to do one thing: oscillate, to pulse on and off like a tiny living clock. And this shows you exactly how elegant it is. Check out this loop. Gene A makes a protein that shuts down gene B. Simple enough. But with gene B turned off, it can't make its protein, which was supposed to shut down gene C. So what happens? Gene C turns on. Then gene C's protein goes and shuts down gene A, and the whole cycle starts over. A turns off B, which lets C turn on, which turns off A. It's this perfect self-sustaining loop that creates a predictable pulse inside a living cell. It's literally programming with DNA. So we've seen models that can predict and models that can help us design. But what happens when you hit a wall? When you're on the cutting edge of something like machine learning, but you just don't have enough data to even get started? This is a huge headache in AI called the small data problem. On the left, with tons of data, millions of pictures, a model can learn to tell cats from dogs no problem. It's happy. But on the right, what if you only have, say, a dozen pictures? The model gets totally confused. It can't find a real pattern, so it starts focusing on weird random things. That's called overfitting, and its predictions become unstable and basically useless. And this slide, wow, it shows you exactly what that instability looks like in the real world. On the right, with plenty of data, you see the model's error rate going down in this nice, smooth curve. It's learning. But look at the left, with only 9 samples. It's pure chaos. The lines are jumping all over the place. The model isn't learning, it's just guessing wildly. It never finds a solution. So what do? Well, one of the most common tricks in the book is to generate synthetic data. The idea is if you don't have enough real data, you just make some up. You create new artificial data points that look and feel like your original set, just to give the model more examples to practice with. But here's the million-dollar question. It's easy to make up more data. It's incredibly hard to make up more good data. If your fake data doesn't capture the deep, hidden structure of the real stuff, you're just teaching your model garbage. So how can you possibly check? And this is where things get really, really cool.
Enter a field of math called topological data analysis, or TDA. Now, instead of looking at specific numbers, TDA looks at the overall shape of the data. To a topologist, a coffee mug and a donut are basically the same object because they both have one hole. TDA does the same thing for data. It ignores the noisy little details and focuses on the big, important features, like clusters and loops. So here's a peek at how it works. You start with your data as just a cloud of points. That's image A. TDA then starts connecting the dots, and it watches to see what shapes emerge, like in B and C. It keeps track of when clusters form or when loops pop into existence and then disappear. And then, this is the amazing part. All of that information gets distilled down into this thing called a persistence barcode, shown in D. It's literally a unique fingerprint for the shape of your data. So, and this is the big reveal. You can run this process on your original, real data and get its barcode. Then you run the same process on your new synthetic data and get its barcode. And if those two fingerprints match up, bingo, you can be confident that your synthetic data has the same fundamental structure as the real thing. It's an incredible quality control check. So let's just pull all of this together. We've looked at 3 totally different fields, but they're all using models in these really sophisticated ways. It's like having this universal toolkit for making sense of the world. So when you boil it all down, we saw how in epidemiology, the goal of modeling is to predict the future. In synthetic biology, it's to design a new reality. And in machine learning, it can be used to validate that the data we're using is actually sound. Predict, design, and validate. Those are 3 incredibly powerful things to be able to do. Ultimately, it all comes back to this idea that modeling is our fundamental way of taming complexity. It can be a map that guides us through a reality that already exists, or it can be the blueprint we use to build a new one. When you think about it, modeling is a tool that lets us not only read the rules that govern our world, but in some cases, begin to write new ones. So the only real question left is, with a toolkit this powerful, what complex problems should we point it at next?